I grew up in a small farming town in southern Iowa, where scarecrows were just part of the landscape. Every field had one standing somewhere in the distance, with old flannel shirts hanging off wooden frames. During the day, nobody paid attention to them. At night was different. People didn't really joke about them after dark. My grandfather especially hated talking about them. Whenever I asked why some farmers left them up year-round, even after harvest season, he'd just say, "Some things are better left standing where they are." Back in October of 2022, my parents left town for a livestock auction and asked me to stay at my grandfather's farmhouse for a few nights. He had passed away earlier that year, and the place had been sitting empty ever since. I didn't mind staying there alone at first. I'd spent half my childhood on that property. The farm sat in the middle of nowhere. Cornfields in every direction. No nearby houses. No traffic at night. Just wind and insects. The first evening felt normal enough. I unpacked my stuff, watched TV for a while, and fell asleep on the couch. The second night was when things started getting weird. Around 11, I noticed one of the scarecrows through the kitchen window. It stood near the eastern fence line, wearing an old brown coat I recognized from my grandfather's closet. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but I couldn't stop looking at it. Every time I glanced away and looked back, it felt different somehow. Not closer exactly, just different. Its head looked tilted slightly toward the house. I remember trying to laugh it off because I knew how ridiculous it sounded. I even made coffee to wake myself up a little. But the uncomfortable feeling stayed with me the entire night. A little before midnight, I found one of my grandfather's old journals sitting on a shelf upstairs. Most of it was just notes about crops and weather. But one page had something written across it in shaky handwriting. A little before midnight, I found one of my grandfather's old journals sitting on a shelf upstairs. Most of it was just notes about crops and weather. But one page had something written across it in shaky handwriting. If the eyes meet yours after midnight, don't look away first. That sentence stuck with me. At exactly midnight, the entire atmosphere outside changed. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the only way I can explain it. The air suddenly felt heavy and still. Even the crickets stopped making noise. I walked onto the porch with a flashlight because I wanted to prove to myself I was just being paranoid. The scarecrow was still there near the fence. I pointed the flashlight toward it. That's when my stomach dropped. Its eyes looked real. Not painted on black circles like before. Real eyes. Wet looking. Focused directly on me. The second I noticed them, I felt this horrible pressure in my chest, like something grabbed onto me from the inside. My breathing changed immediately, slow and shallow. Then I heard breathing coming from the field too. At first I thought it was echoing in my head somehow, but no matter how still I stood, I could hear it clearly, and it matched my breathing exactly. I wanted to go back inside, but I couldn't stop staring at it. Then the scarecrow moved. Just a little at first. One arm twitched. Its head leaned sideways with this dry, cracking sound that reminded me of stepping on dead branches. There wasn't any wind, but I could hear corn husks scraping together all around it. Then it climbed off the wooden post. I know how impossible that sounds. I know how insane it sounds saying it out loud. But I watched it happen. The thing bent downward into this unnatural crouch, its limbs folding awkwardly like they weren't built right. It didn't move like a person. It moved like something trying to imitate one. That's when fear really hit me. I backed toward the porch door, still staring at it, But every time I blinked, it was suddenly closer than before. Not running, not walking, just closer. The smell hit me next. Wet dirt. Mold. Rotting leaves. It smelled like an old basement that had been sealed shut for years. Then I heard whispering. At first it sounded faint, almost buried under the sound of my own breathing. But after a few seconds, I realized the voice was repeating my own thoughts back to me. Every terrified thing running through my head came back in this dry whisper that sounded like grain grinding inside a machine. You noticed me. You looked too long. I ran inside and slammed the door behind me so hard the glass rattled. I stayed awake until sunrise, holding my grandfather's shotgun, even though I knew it probably wouldn't help me if that thing came in sight. By morning, every scarecrow was back where it belonged, completely still. I tried convincing myself I imagined all of it until I changed clothes later that day. Straw fell out of my sleeves onto the floor. Not a few pieces either. Handfuls of it. The worst part happened that night when I looked in the bathroom mirror. For 1 second, my reflection didn't move when I did, and its eyes looked empty.